Coach Brennan, we'll start with Justin.
After the dust has settled, what's just the message to the team moving forward?
Well, I think there's a lot of them. The biggest thing being that there's so many details in that game, small things that are fixable, that I think we can address and attack aggressively, and we'd be feeling a lot better if we had just handled some of those details a little bit better. And so that was kind of to my point the other night where I said I need to coach this team better because I do, and making sure that we get those things airtight before we take the field again.
And what are those details?
Everything from how we released on punt coverage to depths of routes to eye discipline. Just like like I said, there's a lot.
David, what went into your decision to punt Tyler in that game?
It was the operational time. He's just gets it off faster.
And in terms of, you mentioned, obviously the special teams, some of the things you guys worked on. In terms of the punt and the blocking, the protections, using defensive linemen in that particular position, is that a philosophy? What goes into your philosophy there?
So in the shield?
Yeah.
So those are always big bodies when you're a shield, when you're not a traditional punt formation team. Those are always big bodies, so they're always offensive or defensive linemen, just because they take up more space, and you're hopefully kind of trying to build a wall in front of the punter.
Jason and Brian.
Something that you kind of noticed right camp, and you noticed there in the first couple of games, the velocity of the handoffs, they seem to be slower sometimes than just the speed of the run game. Schematically, what is the reasoning behind that?
Well, depending on what we're running, is it you want to give those blockers either if it's some sort of gap scheme where we're pulling offensive linemen or some kind of zone scheme, you want to have it. If it's that gap scheme, you don't want the back to be ahead of the pullers, right? And so we're using obviously offensive linemen and tight ends in that scheme, or in fullbacks too sometimes. And then in the zone scheme, you normally want to have a chance for your down lineman to get some movement on the down lineman. So,
Brian and Justin.
I had asked you previously about the improvement from game to game, and you had said between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 is where you see the biggest. Why do you think maybe that hasn't happened at this point, and what can you do to make it so that it's 3 or 4 now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal. I think the bye comes at a good time for us. I think it gives us a chance to hopefully get a little bit healthy and clean up some of the things that we did not do well the other night. And then the other part of that is that I got to give Kansas State credit; they're a good football team.
Justin, is there an update on Ja'Cory and his situation?
There's not.
How frustrating is it for you to deal with this right now?
I just feel bad for the young man. I really do.
Jason.
Before the season, I'd asked you what you felt the identity of the team was. You said you wanted to wait a few games and see. Are you able to answer that at this point? What do you think the identity is?
No, I think we're still finding it. I think, you saw, we've had moments of really good football, in all three phases, and then we've had moments of not great football. And so I think the consistency piece is really what we're trying to achieve. And, that's up to me and the rest of the coaching staff to continue to kind of take advantage of this time we have this week and next week to not only prepare for a very good Utah team on the road, but to also get our own stuff tightened up.
I know you don't like to talk about injuries, but just because it happened on national TV and all that, is there any update on that one as it was?
Yeah, he's been with the training staff, so it's going to take a little bit of time.
David and Justin.
Brian, you mentioned the defense having their eyes in the right place. What are some of the things that you want them to be seeing that right now they're not seeing?
Well, depending on, when, whatever the call is, sometimes those things change with motion or, zone scheme, that type of stuff. And I would say that, the biggest culprit would be just getting our eyes in the backfield, which is sometimes a tendency of young players. And we can't, our eyes need to be on our work. It can't be in the backfield.
Justin and Brian.
Why do you think you guys have struggled to stop the run this year?
That's a good question. I felt like we did a good job of that a couple weeks ago. Obviously, last week was different. Quarterback run. I think adds a different element, especially when the quarterback is as athletic as the kid we played last week. So I think that adds another component to it, and I think there's some things that we can do schematically that we're talking about in terms of giving us a better chance to be cleaner on that, and then I think technically there's some things that we can do that the guys playing can do to hopefully mitigate some of that.
Ryan and Damien in the back.
Do you think the players, particularly the ones who returned and stuck around, have maybe felt like the pressure of expectations in these first few games, and then maybe could a loss possibly look at an opportunity to just move forward and not worry about the expectations?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely possible. I think that's hard for anyone to handle, a ton of praise or a ton of negativity, but both can be dangerous for young people, and there's nothing in, that stuff doesn't ever get shut off for them because it all comes directly to their phone. I think I've said it to you all. I used to say it a lot in my last job, just back in the day when we played, like it might be in the newspaper, but like your college friends don't read the newspaper. So they weren't going to give you a hard time about dropping a pass or missing the tackle. But now you drop a pass or miss a tackle, 10,000 people might blow you up on Twitter and say a bunch of really hard stuff to hear. And so I think that part of it, that's part of their life that they have to deal with and that we have to help them try and deal with. And I think just watching college football the last couple of weeks, I think there's a lot of people dealing with managing expectations and playing to the level they're capable of playing. And for us, we haven't had those kind of expectations coming into a season before, and so we are definitely battling that.
Damien in the back and then Justin.
Been a lot of topic, but what do you remember about being roommates with Troy Thomas?
Wow. I remember Troy being an awesome football coach. It was actually Troy and his brother Lance and my wife. We all shared a house in Hawaii Kai, and Troy and his brother were always like super into fitness and always like he's still like super jacked. He's always been like a total buff guy. Always taking really good care of himself. But I was always like, even back then, I was super impressed with what the caliber of football coach he was. Just did an excellent job.
Justin and Jason.
With the bye week coming up, what are the plans in terms of recruiting coaches getting out on the road, if you have it?
Yeah. So we'll get out on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and so kind of all over the place where everyone's going. So I'm excited about it because I get to see my son play, which I've missed the first 4 games or 3 games. So I get to see that, but then we'll see a bunch of the important kids that we're recruiting in this class.
And then how do you guys go about strategy with the class, just in terms of areas that you're recruiting, programs that you're targeting, portal, all that? How do you approach 25?
That's a multi-layered question, I would say. Okay, so the portal thing is a little bit unknown because you don't know what that's going to look like in terms of your current roster either.
Sure.
Right? So and then players aren't in the portal, right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the players that are in the portal that are good are playing college football for somebody, right? So we'll see what that looks like when that opens up in December, right? And for us, I think I think we're always going to be a developmental program here, so we're going to be first and foremost high school kids. I think that's how we build sustainable teams and develop those players over time. The portal players I see is kind of like the way that we've recruited junior college players over time, where we need an instant fix or somebody that you recruited isn't quite ready and you need somebody to play this year. And so that's how we'll look at the portal players.
And then as like regions,
like
Texas, California, places that go.
Yeah. So I mean, just nationally, Texas, California, Florida have the most Division I players in the country every year. You have high concentrations of Division I players in the state of Arizona and the state of Hawaii, state of Utah. So a lot of stuff that proximity-wise, and then also where we play. I think that is where we're targeted. We're obviously heavily involved in Texas and California right now. We're involved in Hawaii. We're involved in Utah. We're involved obviously in Arizona for more than any, first and foremost. So
Jason and Brian.
How do you go about fixing penalties? Like, how do you approach that with the team?
I think, like, I know I mentioned this the first week. To me, I draw a line between the stuff that's fixable, false start, offsides, like pre-snap, right? Formation, like those are things that are absolutely in our control. A holding penalty, you know, Rhino's a good young player. He's fighting his tail off. He's going against a 6-year guy who's a good dude. He's a good player. You know what I mean? So like some of those penalties, you know, we'll hammer technique, we'll hammer fit in our hands inside, understanding if that guy gets outside our frame, we got to let him go, that type of stuff. Those ones, I think, you know, the ones that happen in the football game, you're trying like hell to avoid. But the ones that you can eliminate are the ones that are pre-snap or after the whistle, which are catastrophic, which we've done a good job of that.
Brian and David.
What's the practice schedule like this week? Did you take Saturday, Sunday off, and then what's going on from here?
Yeah, the players were off Saturday and Sunday. Today we met with them, and then had a run, and now they're lifting, and then we'll practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we'll be back Sunday. And then we go recruiting.
David.
Brent, when you viewed the punt return play, do you believe that the play on Genesis was a foul? And do you send things to the conference for review in that?
Yeah, we send any plays that happen in the course of a game. You know, we talk about, or we talk about as a staff, and then we send to the conference, which is fine. I mean, I think officials have one of the hardest jobs in the world. They have to see all that stuff in real time, and you know, like, and everyone's always on their butt about, you know, good calls, bad calls. If you're an Arizona fan, you're pissed off. If you're a Kansas State fan, you're happy. And you know what I mean? So, like, they got a tough job to do also.
Justin.
A lot of fans could have an emotional reaction after a loss like that, but what leaves you with optimism that your team can turn this around and have the season that people expect you to have?
Well, I think it's really the leadership of the team. I think we have great young people in that room, and I think that those are the ones that we're going to lean on, because we're going to need their best when their best is needed. And you know, I think the expectations of the public, you know, like no one has higher expectations than the players and the people in the building do for what we're trying to do. You know what I mean? So that's just part of it.
Brian.
Is there an art to drawing holding penalties for like the defensive lineman or whatever? Like a way that you can draw attention to it that maybe one team does better than the other?
I think some guys are better at drawing those penalties than others. In my experience, they tend to be guys that play really hard. Guys are just relentless in pursuit of the football or the quarterback, that end up, you know, fighting through and getting on the edge of an offensive lineman and having that offensive lineman be in a bad position to stop it.
But like, is there a way to like draw attention to the fact that you're being held while it's happening, or are you not supposed to worry about whether it gets called, just to keep playing through the play?
We'd like them to keep playing through the play, because, you know, if you do the Vlade flop and they don't call it, you know, then the ball's running past you for a touchdown. You know what I mean? I'd rather have them play through it and make the tackle.
You're going back and forth.
Yeah. So Jason, Tagan, I wanted to know, am I wearing a leg to the game? You plan on wearing the leg at every game?
So I think I've talked a little bit about this. Like, those leis are gifts from players' families, and so on Saturday or on Friday, that was a gift from T-Mac's grandmother, and I thought it was very, very thoughtful. I'm sure there's some people out there that don't like it, but that's okay. You know, to me, I'm being respectful to our players' folks and their culture.
Justin and then David.
How do you guys go about getting others not named T-Mac involved in the passing game?
Well, I think you saw a little bit last week, right? Like Montana had a couple good plays. I think we're expecting Jeremiah Patterson to really come along, and then, you know, there's definitely we need, you know, saw Chris Hunter play a little bit, and I think he's a player that can develop in that space. And then also the tight end position. You know what I mean? So Kean and Sam Olson, I think, can help us there too.
Last question to David.
Right, just to follow on Justin's question about Ja'Cory, do you feel like all the necessary due diligence was done from the program side to clarify what his situation was before you hired him?
I did. Through the compliance office, he was thoroughly vetted, and so now we're just waiting to see what the end decision or end result is with the NCAA.
All right, that's our time.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.